Okay, we're going live on Facebook right now. So if you're on Facebook, thanks for joining us. If you're on Zoom, we've been having a little bit of a chat already, which is awesome. And I'm thrilled that you're here today to explore some more repertoire. Instead of the Dunedin Concert Band rehearsing, here we are just figuring out, there's some good music out there. Why don't we participate in it, playing it, just figure out what we can do while we can't actually get together physically. So thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much. What are we doing today? Today we're going to look at one of Clare Grundman's pieces. It's actually, now this is an interesting thing. And by the way, while I think of it, if you do like this workshop, if you do like these repertoire things that we're doing, please let us know. There are a few ways you can do that. You can comment on the Facebook page. You can share this workshop when it actually, after it's gone live on Facebook. You can share it from Facebook to your friends and groups and whatever else. So that's great. But comments are always a good thing. But also donations. We are doing these things because we're not rehearsing. But DMS is still in business. It's still doing business as usual, just nothing in person. So we do have expenses and bills as normal. And we've got a great event coming up in a couple of weeks where we're actually doing a bit of a fundraiser, an online fundraiser. It's a telethon, a traditional telethon. Because why not? I haven't seen one of those for a long, long time. So we're going to try and do a terrific event. And that's on Friday the 24th. At 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's instead of the Dunedin Concert Band's concert that would have been then. So that's a massive fundraising opportunity. Just load up those debit and credit cards, all right? Make sure there's a big balance on there so that you can donate tax-deductible donations during that telethon. But if you just want to send us $5, 10, 20, $25 for these workshops, that will be awesome as well, just to keep them going. So thank you for letting me share that. Thanks also for the comments on the last week's workshop. We experimented a little bit with the promotion of it, the distribution. We thought we'd try and just let people do their thing. Didn't get as many views as the last couple of weeks on that one. But still well over 100. So thank you so much for watching that one and participating in that. And the comments as well. It's really, really good, really awesome. Glad you're liking these. Glad you're still turning up and bringing some new people with you. That's awesome. If you don't know anything about Dunedin Concert Band, you may not know who I am. I'm Stephen P. Brown. I am the conductor of the Dunedin Concert Band. Took over in 2014. We've since set up the Dunedin Music Society as our parent organization, the not-for-profit status. But the DCB's been around since 1981. Okay, coming up for 19 years. No, 39 years. Don't know where that came from. So we've been around for a while here in Florida. We're just making strides. We just exploring repertoire, which a lot of groups, wind bands, choirs, orchestras, chamber groups don't always explore. And so these workshops are to replace our normal Tuesday night rehearsal. And I'm thrilled that you could join us today. If you want us to review one of your bands or groups' performances and the repertoire workshop in a future repertoire workshop, let me know. Let us know somehow. Right, to send me an email, stephen@dunedinmusicsociety.org, or go through our website or something like that, and we'll try and schedule in your performance on YouTube for a review, like a react. This trendy thing right now. So India Reacts is one, and all these people are reacting to performances of old and whatever else. So if you have something you'd like us to explore, you think is really good repertoire worth exploring, make sure that you have your band or your orchestra or your choir has that on YouTube, and then we can take it from there. All right, so Clare Grundman. Finally, we meet an American composer. It took us 4 workshops to get there, but we've had British, we've had Russian, we've had French. Now we've come across an American composer who wrote specifically for concert band in this case. And Clare, he was, I think he was a Clevelander, is where he is from. He died in 1966. Very romantic, very traditional music across the board, but very, very clever writing. And in fact, a lot of his stuff comes up on contests. I know in the American scene, particularly in high schools, there are a lot of contest repertoire out there, and Clare Grundman's music is up there as well. This piece that we're looking at today is actually called the American Folk Rhapsody. It's written in 1948, and it was at a time when Grundman had already studied with Paul Hindemith. Hindemith was an amazing progressive composer, which makes it even more surprising how much Grundman is romantic and traditional when you consider that Hindemith messed around with harmony a great deal. But that was his teacher. And also Grundman, he actually was a musician in the US Coast Guard. So I know we have a few Coast Guard folk. In fact, John, hi John, I hope you're watching, who are Coast Guard, formerly Coast Guard. And yeah, just like any other branch of the military, they have musicians in there. And Clare Grundman was one of those. So this piece came from around that time. He just took 4 traditional folk songs from the US and arranged them and then put them all together as one piece of music. Now, some people call this the American Folk Rhapsody #1, and the reason is because he wrote 3 more rhapsodies, 3 more sets of folk tunes. The only reason he wrote 3 more is because this first one was so popular, but he was not intending to. This was an accident. So it's not called American Folk Rhapsody #1. It is just called American Folk Rhapsody, and that's all it is. That's what he was going to do. But it became so popular, he then did #2, #3, and #4. It's like Jaws, the movie, right? It's not Jaws 1, it's Jaws, and then Jaws 2, and then Jaws 3. So it's the same thing there. This is the original. Now, the 4 folk tunes in this, well, we can talk about that as we listen to it. Folk tunes, folk songs always have a story. In fact, most music has a story. And this is actually very important because why is music telling a story? Why do we use music to help tell stories? There's nothing stopping us literally just telling a story. And in fact, you can even convert that story into poetry, which is basically what songs are made of. That's the lyrics of the song. It's basically poetry. That's clever enough. That's exciting enough. You can remember poetry a lot easier than you can just straight narrative and prose. But so why add the music part? And I think this is something that a lot of us forget, because the music, being the language of emotions, is the part that tells us what's going on behind the scenes. What is it that the storyteller or the characters can't actually put into words? That's what the music is doing there. And there are some very, very clever folk out there who do some amazing things with music to help us emotionally explore the topic or the story. So when we get folk tunes and folk music, it's not just heritage. It's not just culture. It's not just people singing something because they want to. They're actually dealing with an emotion somehow. And I really, really hope that as a musician, that's exactly what you're trying to do whenever you play or sing, is to help other people explore the emotional side of whatever it is that you're sharing. So we'll have a look at that later on. What else is there about this particular music? The 4, okay, so yeah, the 4 folk tunes. My Little Mohi, which actually we know under a different title because it's the first line. The first line is On Top of Old Smoky. You'll probably recognize that one. Then there's Shantyman's Life, Sourwood Mountain, which is about chickens, by the way, and Sweet Betsy from Pike. So those are the 4 folk tunes that we'll hear throughout this piece of music. It's not very long, this Rhapsody. A Rhapsody is a short collection, a short just melee. Probably the most famous is Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, because it's just a bunch of melodies brought together and explored and messed around with. There's no formal structure. There's no formal sonata form or rondo or anything like that. It's just a storytelling. So that's why it's a Rhapsody. Now let's make sure that you can actually hear and see what we're trying to do here. All right, so right now you should be seeing a rather black screen. Let me go here and put this up to full screen. All right. And I hope you'll be able to hear this. We're going to start off straight away. This is the Montgomery County Community Band. All right, so you recognize the melody, right? Probably because you've played this before, you've sung this before, or even you've just heard it around. Even if you've never played this particular music, it's a very famous tune indeed. But that opening fanfare, was that really a fanfare? Did you really feel inspired and to pay attention, all that kind of stuff? Yes, there was a flurry. The timing perhaps wasn't particularly wonderful. Some of the tuning perhaps also could have been a little bit together, more in tune with each other. But it needs to be an opening. Okay, we're starting with this grand opening in order to get your attention. And those horns and euphoniums, ba ba ba, they're so Disney, all right. And this was pre-Disney musicals, so who stole it from whom, we don't know. But that is such a big attraction. That jump of a major sixth is what really grabs our attention. We need to make more of that. We're like saying hello. That's what that's all about. All right, let's make something bigger of that next time. Okay, I'm not hearing much in the dynamic variance there. I think it is in, well, I know it's in there, it's in the score, but we're not actually sharing the dynamics to again, make people pay attention. I'm trying to grab you. This is like an overture. Just these first few bars are like an overture of an opera or a musical. It's a summary of what's coming up, kind of. And in this case, the overture says, we're about to start. Take your seats, pay attention to what's going on. And we need to do that audibly, as well as just visually and whatever else. This is not a moment for people to come in and just keep chatting, whatever else. If we start strong with the trombones as well as the euphoniums, and I think the saxophones will play in that opening theme as well. But if we start strong with that and then suddenly back off, it forces people to pay attention. It forces people to actually, oh, where'd it go? What happened? And now we're saying, okay, now we're paying attention. Let's figure out what's going on. The accelerando is very difficult to do well. Any accelerando like this into a faster tempo at the beginning of a piece is always going to be tough. Oh, perfect. I'm so happy to hear that bass thumping away underneath. Okay, we have a lovely little waltz going on. To me, this is more like the village square, the village green kind of scenario. You may have seen things like My Fair Lady, that kind of era, where people are out in the park, they're sitting around the bandstand in the park, maybe on a bicycle, cycling around. I think there's also in 101 Dalmatians, they do that scene as well in England. But that's the kind of thing, is that this is a village gathering. This is the kind of waltz that it is. The topic is very interesting. We'll get onto that in a minute. I'm not sure the clarinet and flute need to compete with each other quite as much as they are in this group. We can hear it, but I love that bass line. I love that the bass is there supporting them. got the timps added into the bass line as well. It's very relaxed, very calm, very gentle, very appropriate playing. I like that. It's not forceful at this point. No, they're not lucky enough to have Santa playing for them. That is actually, it's in the comments. It is, what's his first name? Leonard Sklar. He's actually a bass player in studios in Los Angeles. A lot of pop recordings from the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. That chap with the beard on the bass clarinet, he's the bass player in that. Phenomenal musician indeed. They're lucky to have him in there. But again, those two bass clarinet players next to the bassoons, sitting in front of the tubas, all of that bass is adding some weight. It's helping the upper woodwinds tune and sit on something, sit on a foundation. Okay, you may have heard that little crescendo, which was really, really good. There was a little crescendo there leading into the reprise of the theme and to the next phrase of the melody. But then we need to back off a little bit. Okay, yes, lean into it with that crescendo, but then back off a little bit. Whenever you go into a new dynamic or away from a specific dynamic into a new one, particularly if it's a crescendo, then just back off a little bit once you've reached it. Okay, not always. Sometimes you need to actually keep going. Depends on the melody itself, but in this case, it's a sigh. So we crescendo into the next phrase, and then we can carry on singing. Okay, you don't crescendo into the next phrase and then keep talking like that and still getting stronger. It doesn't always have to work that way. Okay, but they did a nice crescendo indeed. Now, there's some beautiful chromaticism going on. I don't know if you can hear that. We just happened to be looking at the euphoniums at that point when they were doing it. But there's a beautiful phrase. And at the moment, they're punching each note as a harmony. It's not just harmony. They have their own phrase going on. So sing that phrase out. It may not be the main tune. We're not trying to compete and be louder than everyone else and make sure they can hear us. But sing that tune through your instrument as you're playing it. Those chromatics are absolutely beautiful. Good. So the tempo, the slowdown of the tempo here does it naturally. You don't have to aid it. The piece winds down. There are several versions out there where it's just cheesy. They do the ritardando so excessively that it just doesn't make any musical sense whatsoever. This chap Charlie, he just lets it wind down a little bit and calms down into the next one. I forgot what I was going to say. It was a really good point as well. I'm not entirely convinced that this section, this brass section, the chorale, it's a beautiful chorale throughout this whole section. I'm not entirely convinced they're listening to what's going on. They can hear the oboe playing the melody, but I'm not sure they're listening to it. I'm not sure they are accompanying. Again, they're playing the notes in front of them. Okay, so we've got three things going on here. We have the main melody going on in the lower end of the clarinets and the saxophones. We've also got the high woodwinds on flutes and piccolo going through a counter melody. and then we have the chorale in the bass, in the brass. I would love to know that every player in this group has heard each one of those things separately, because they're building on each other. They are accompanying each other. That chorale works just as nice. If you took out the clarinets, if you took out the main melody, and just had the chorale and the counter melody going on, nobody would know any different. It is beautiful. It sounds great. You can sing it through the flutes, oboe, and the piccolo. It's really very nice. But that's not the main melody. Okay, very careful. They do a nice job here. You've got to be very careful not to actually compete the counter melodies. But again, they are phrases. They are tunes. And if you're aware that there are three things going on at the same time, it's awesome. Now, this one, this is that first folk song, on top of Old Smokey. I don't know if you know what it's about. He lost his true lover because basically he was too slow, she was too slow. I can't figure out in the lyrics who was too slow, but basically they fall out of each other. And then this chap describes that a broken heart is worse than a theft. That a woman who breaks your heart is worse than a thief coming in the night and taking all your possessions, because that's eternal and you can't do anything about that. Not one girl in 100 a poor boy can trust. Really? This is what I like about folk songs. You know, they're so blunt, and there are these emotions that people are dealing with. I'll hug you and kiss you and tell you more lies and cross lines on a railroad car or stars in the skies. So come all you maidens and listen to me. Never place your affections on the green willow tree. For the leaves, they will wither, and the roots, they will die. You'll all be forsaken and never know why. Okay. That was the first one. That happy jolly tune that we opened with, that was what it's about. It's all, I mean, it's terrible. It's embarrassing. Now, this slow one, this slow folk song that we've actually transitioned into, this is a shanty man's life, and he's feeling sorry for himself because he's out in the woods chopping down the trees and he never gets home to see his girl. So it's a wearisome life being a shanty man. Now, to me, this is a little weird because, you know, this is an American folk song, and he says, from morning till night in the forest wild and dreary, transported are we, and so on. So he's swinging of an axe. He actually says he's swinging an axe. To me, a shanty is more along the lines of something to do with the sea and the ocean. There are lots of British folk songs that talk about the shanty town, which is the town that the Navy would arrive in as a stopover kind of thing. It wasn't the main downtown area. It was a kind of a town on the side. So same word, different meanings. I'm glad I read the lyrics here. But this guy's on his own. He's far from his loved one. Lonely stream where he's with the wolf and the bear and the owl. That's the only company that he has. It's terrifying howls going on all throughout the night. It's cold, it's winter, the winds. As soon as the morning arises, the star does appear, the wild moons go, wild woods disappear. Had we ale, wine, or beer, our spirits far to cheer. Yeah, a bit of drink will do that for you. We're a glass of whiskey shone when we're in the woods alone for to pass away our long exile. So this one, he's lamenting the fact that he's away from his beautiful bride or his beautiful woman. Do you think these players know those stories? Are they playing them? Are they playing the emotion behind that, the loneliness? Let's get back to the fact that there are three things going on. I'm sorry. Let's get back to the fact that there are three things going on. We've got the main melody, we've got the counter melody, and we also have the chorale and the brass. All right, now where did the melody go? What's going on? We're hearing some very high notes. We know the chorale's going on, but where is the tune? It actually got transferred to lower pitched instruments, and we're losing the line of the song. Okay, it could be that some other guy is singing the tune, the folk song, all of a sudden. You know, one guy singing along, and another guy takes over, and then comes back again. But we've lost it. It's disappeared on us. All we can hear are the high notes, which are going to pierce across. It's like a triangle. No matter the size of the orchestra or the band, a triangle will always be heard because of its high frequencies. It will always carry across, no matter how loud or quiet you play it, within reason. Same thing here. Flutes, piccolos, oboe, they're very, very high pitched. I think possibly the E-flat clarinet. I haven't seen one in here. I'm sure it's in there. But you can hear that over the melody, which has gone to lower instruments. So you've got to be careful of that balance. So it sounds to me like the clarinets think that they are now doing a different melody in the middle, but they're in fact not. They're not even doing a counter melody. What they're playing in the clarinets here is a harmonization of the counter melody that the flutes are playing. Let me share that one again. So the clarinets were playing the tune, flutes and oboe were playing a counter melody. Okay, at this point the tune has gone over there somewhere to another section. And the clarinets are now, they're not doing their own counter melody. What they're doing is a harmonization of that counter melody. Very clever writing. Okay, so there's a musical device there. It's the hold, it's the pause, it's the fermato, whatever term you want to use. The music builds up to the end of this little bit of a section, and then we just kind of hold it there. It's very, very tough for wind instruments to keep that realistic, to keep it in the light of what a folk tune is. You wouldn't sing it quite like that. You wouldn't necessarily do a crescendo on that pause, on that note. You're holding it because it's the end of the phrase and you're sad. What happens when you've shared something that's sad and you're at the end of that phrase, that thought, you know, you have that thought that, you know, if you're sad and you're sharing a story, and I miss, you know, my girl, and I have to go back. That's the pause. That's what we need to reflect when we play a pause in the middle of a phrase like this. Okay, it's not a technique to show off. It's not. You're not Pavarotti singing Nessun Dorma and you're going to hold that top note forever. That's showmanship, all right? But if you're talking about actual music itself and the emotions of what's going on behind it, that's what that pause should be. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to assume he's talking about how he's missing his girl, perhaps, because of the high notes that's going on there. The fact that he's cold and he misses her. To me, this group look like they're just playing it too serious. They're just taking this too seriously. Maybe they don't know what the story's about. Maybe they're just playing the notes on the page. They're not actually sharing the story or the emotion behind it. So I would make this, I mean, this is an intimate moment. This is very special. Whenever you lose that bass and the middle parts and you just have mostly the high winds going on with a little bit of an accompaniment underneath, this is a moment to just bring it into your heart, okay, and make it personal. It's too matter of fact to me. It's just too plain, too serious. I'm playing this line, you're playing that line. We need to make sure the balance is right. That's what they've done here. It's all about the technique of playing. Yeah, do you hear it there? In the actual melody itself, you can hear what I'm saying in this. The rise up, it kind of goes nowhere. Again, very specific, and then it comes back, and then they have 3 punchy notes at the end, bomb, bomb, and it's not a winding down of the phrase. We don't know what's going through the guy's mind. These are folk tunes. Folk tunes are born in story. What's the story? The music tells us the emotion of the story. Just not feeling it in this particular group. Very plain. Okay, there was a good part there when the scale was going down. We've explored this in other pieces of music. There's a scale going down, transfers between instruments through the bassoons, through the euphoniums, plonks on the bottom line there. Can make, again, more of a phrase of it, more of a scale. That's an actual scale that not one person plays, but several people. Just lean into it. Give whoever's coming next, in this case the oboe, give them something to still stand on. Give them foundation. All right. If that scale is too choppy and it's not consistent, and you don't land on the bass line, then we're going to lose. We're not going to give them anything to grow on. Okay, flutes, you don't have to compete. We can hear you. All right, back off. We're going to hear you anyway with this. The only thing going on, you don't have to put it in our face. No offense to anyone. I hope that's not harsh. Let's listen to that trumpet again. Yeah, so I'm sure you're picking this up now, how important that bass line is. We can hear those wonderful arpeggios going on the bass line. That's what's consistent in this phrase. The melody's being picked apart and going around different instruments. They all need to not only be listening to each other and recognizing that they're actually all singing part of the same tune, that it's just different people singing it, but the fact that bass line is the only consistent thing that they've got to build in. If they listen to each other, if the bass line knows where the tune's going to go because they've heard it before, they're listening to what's going on, then they can adjust as well. But yeah, well done. Okay, well done. Good crescendo. It's quite a dramatic crescendo. There's a lot of it, which is done really well in this particular group. Percussion, you can do the same thing, please. All right, particularly in that bass drum, don't just thump at it. It is a musical instrument. It can speak musically in emotions. So everyone do that crescendo, leaning into something different. We're also speeding up the tempo, and the same as ritardando, you've got to get it together. You've got to feel it and know what's going on. All right. What I like to do in DCB, guys, you know this, sometimes when we've got the time, we will let you lead the rit or the accelerando, only so that you can feel it. You know where it is. You know what it's supposed to sound like. Yes, it does get out of hand sometimes, and that's the role of a conductor, is to make sure we all do it together at the same time. All right, but listen, feel it, know where you're headed. All right, and then the accelerando will work. The crescendo in this was pretty darn good. Also change the mood. What are we getting into? Chickens. Okay, so this this next one is Sourwood Mountain. I don't know why they didn't call it chickens are crowing, because that's the first few words, but they called it chickens are crowing on Sourwood Mountain. Hey ho diddlum day. Of course, it's a folk tune. Of course, it's got ho hum in the middle of it. So many pretty girls, I can't count them. My true love, though. Okay, I remember this one. This story is about this one guy who's absolutely in love with his girl, who is a blue-eyed, I guess, she's like a flower to him, blue-eyed daisy. He then compares her to everyone else, to the people that he doesn't love, all right? And he describes them as a big dog who would bark at you, a little dog would bite you, a big girl will court you, a little one will spite you, but his true love is a blue-eyed daisy. If I don't get her, I'll go crazy. That's what he says, all right? He needs to get home to her. All right, she lives at the head of a holler, I think a hollow, because he's refusing to actually be the courteur, basically. He won't follow her. Lives over the river, a few more jumps and I'll be with her. All right, so he's got to get through a few things in life, not just across the river, but in life probably to get there. Ducks in the pond, geese in the ocean, and if you're not careful, the devil's in the woman if they take a notion. I'm sorry, ladies. No, I didn't write this stuff, okay? This is American folk tunes. I don't know why it's so against the way women are, but this is what guys experience. I guess the only way we could express it is through a song. I don't know. I'm making that up. All right. So, yeah, this is the next one. The chickens are crowing on Sourwood Mountain. Okay, clearly a square dance, right? Can you hear it? Good. Can you feel it? I'm not feeling it. I want to dance to this. I want to get up. This is a bit of wonderful release from that really emotional part, the sad part that we had just now, that folk tune that we just went through. So I want to get up and dance to this. Please, folks, come on, inspire me. This is funny stuff. Okay, and I'm not experiencing any contrast here. Clearly the music did something. The music changed dramatically. We need to change with it. Okay, this is the part where you've done a little bit of a square dance, a barn dance. The music changes a little bit, and that's when everyone's changing partners in a barn dance or a square dance. That's when you run over here, you run over there, or you get off the floor so other people can get on the floor, that kind of stuff, and then the music starts again. That's what's going on here. Again, this is just a long line. I'm not sure they know what the story is and what's going on. Okay, brass, wonderful trumpets. I'm glad you came in again at long last, about time. We've got some percussion going on as well. Make something of this. Again, this is something different. This is like the cheers going on in the barn dance. This is a bit of raucousness going on. Maybe some tankards are getting sloshed together. You can make way more of that little fanfare because it is so different, unexpected. Right here. I like to make up stories. I don't know what's going on here specifically with regards to the folk song itself, but I'd like to make up stories if there isn't one. And right there, I imagine the guy and the girl are talking to each other, or a small group of guys are looking at a giggling group of girls, and there's kind of a back and forth between them. They're eyeing each other up, or there's a bit of spit and spat going on, or it could be just a couple. And one of the guys paying a compliment, and the girl says, "Thank you very much. Shut up and let's get on with the dance," kind of thing. You're allowed to use your imagination. We are creative beings after all. That's him. That's her. There with her friends. So we're back to one of the other folk tunes, and now we've got it in a different mood, different style going on. All right. So Clare or Grundman is cleverly intertwining both stories, both emotions of what's going on. Clearly he's got couples on his mind throughout this whole Rhapsody, and the things that we all go through with our loved ones. I like how this band are keeping it smooth and gentle. Again, they're not competing here. There have been quite a few places where they compete against each other, but not here. There are some fabulous chromatic harmonies going on that are just disappearing. We are losing them. We've got the melody going on the trumpets, and then there's a which we really lean into that because it's beautiful. It makes the resolution of the music more powerful because that's obviously the emotion that's going on. There is tension which resolves, and it's those little chromatic parts that create that kind of tension. Is it going to be all right? And then it resolves, and yes, it is going to be all right. Okay, we're back to the chickens crowing on Sourwood Mountain one now. So we need to get back to it. Okay, the music isn't as upbeat as it was before, but again, change the mood, change the style. We're getting back to reality. We've had our moments of dreaming about the girl that we love or whoever. So we're now back to reality, back to the tune that's going on the dance floor. Heard this in other groups where just because of the nature of the instruments and what we're playing whenever we have long notes, be very, very careful about cutting long notes short, particularly in the low brass. It's very tough to do. But when you have a phrase or even just a bar or a dotted half note or something, make sure it gets the length it's supposed to have. Don't take a whole beat or a whole half a beat to take a breath. It breaks it up. It breaks up the harmony, and we lose the momentum of the flow and the flow of the music. It just chops it up, and we don't want choppy all the time. Sometimes it's appropriate, not here. Yeah, as we said before, be careful of that bass drum. The snare drum is actually playing some dynamics, getting us ready to build this lovely mushy noise. The crescendo in the snare drum is there, but we're thumping away at the bass drum as though it's got nothing to do with anything else, like there's a military band nearby or something. That's not what's going on here. I like where this is going. I now finally
All right.
Stuff going on. You got to be careful. What's going on with my microphone? All right, Bev, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me still? Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. so there is this big crescendo. We've landed somewhere, obviously somewhere very emotional indeed, which is really awesome. But you know what? You've got to listen. You've got to do it together. Build on the basis, build on the foundation of that chord, and adjust your tuning as you go up, as you build it, as you get louder. Some instruments will actually get flat the louder they get. Other instruments go sharp the louder that they get. Be aware of what your instrument does, and what your tendencies are. But you've got to pay attention to what's going on. Got to listen. I'm going to force you to listen to that again. Awesome job. Well done, folks. There was no break. There was no breath. There was no pause when we reached the final. You know, Dunedin Concert Band, you hear me say this all the time. You do a crescendo, 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 land. No, that's not what happens. Crescendo, crescendo, crescendo into the climax of the piece. Not sure about you, but that was a non-ending. You know what I mean about a non-ending? Nothing happened, okay? Band got louder. We reached the climax, which was great, and then it just fizzled out. It was slow, and it was just plodding along. I didn't get the idea that we were actually finishing this tune. Now, this fourth tune, this is one which Johnny Cash, I think it was Johnny Cash, made famous. He sang this, one of his major songs that he was well known for. Sweet Betsy from Pike, who crossed the big mountains with her lover Ike, and some oxen and a rooster and a spotted hog, you know, the pig. Now, unfortunately, they get lost. They have to survive. She ends up coming across some other guy. Yeah, okay. And Ike is there looking after all the animals and looking out over the farmland while she's off. But because they got lost, the food ran out, the oxen died, all that kind of stuff. The last piece of bacon that morning was fried. So things are not going too well for them. A miner comes along, asks Betsy to dance with her, and Ike is so full of, is it Ike? No, this miner, the guy who asked her to dance, is so full of alcohol that nothing's going to happen because he won't last. But it turns out, of course, that although Ike and Sweet Betsy got married eventually, Ike got jealous, so he obtained a divorce. And Betsy, who was very satisfied by this miner, said with a shout, "Great, goodbye, you lummox. I'm glad you backed out." Well, that didn't end happy either. Oh my goodness, what is it with these folk songs? But Grundman, like Disney, likes to end things on a happier note. So that's why we get that big climax at the end. Let's listen to all the way through, non-stop. I promise I'm not going to interrupt. And afterwards, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, we'll deal with those at that time, okay? All right, let's listen, use your ears, use your eyes, but try and figure out what you would do differently. Okay, as now you know some of the stories behind these folk tunes. Now you know some of the technical difficulties and things to look out for. Let's think about, as you hear it, let's think about what you would do and what you would listen for when you come to play this. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Good. So I hope you enjoyed that. One interesting thing, it would be nice to find out if this was written for a high school band, okay? And I'd be interested to find out if this had any relation to the fact that just 4 years before Grundman wrote this is when Mio wrote Suite Française, which, as we explored a couple of weeks ago, again was written for American high school bands because he thought Mio thought that they needed contemporary music of their time, which they weren't getting. And of course, being French, he decided to use French folk melodies. And then 4 years later, we get this. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any relationship there, if Grundman wanted to do that. Overall, nice, good job, fair job with this one. Just a few tweaks here and there would make it musical, I think. All right, Bev, do we have any comments, any questions going on either site? Nothing at all. Oh, okay. All right. Spartacus. Okay, so Tom is writing. He said for Spartacus last week, we looked at the Adagio from Spartacus. We talked about emphasizing the lower note prior to the interval to the higher note in order to flow through. Absolutely, this would absolutely want they supplied here. Because that top note is always going to sing. You just need to balance it. Now, does that mean that always the lower note needs to be louder than the top note? No, not necessarily. But we need to take care more of the lower note than we do the top note. Because if we take care of that lower note, that top note will sing anyway. It'll be just right. It'll call people's attention. So the same principle does apply. You do need to take care of the lower note before you do a leap up. The nuances involved are just what makes a musician really, really special. So yeah, a good point. Well done. Absolutely. So Jeff writes that towards the beginning of the piece, the horns kind of got lost to the upper winds, and it felt like that people were competing against each other. This happens a great deal in bands. It's an issue that we deal with all the time. is for some peculiar reason, because we can hear other players, we seem to think that we need to play our part louder, especially if we think we've got the melody going on and we're the most important part of the line. That's what people need to hear. Then yeah, we do tend to overplay. We tend to compete with other sections. Who was it? Maybe George Hurst, one of my conducting teachers. Actually, I think it's somebody more famous, but it could have been George Hurst. So there was a line, a piece of advice that I got was, before you can actually conduct a concerto, you need to learn how to follow. Before you can actually get up on a box and wave your arms and lead people, you need to learn how to follow. I know Peter Drucker, the business guru, has said that. I know Tom Peters, the business guru, has said that. It was a conducting thing that came long before that. So this is what's happening here. We're not always going to be the star player. We're not always going to be the most important thing. We need to learn how to accompany. We need to know when to back off, when it's not our time. And if you don't do that yourself, and you're going to rely on the conductor or somebody else to tell you when that's going to be, you're not helping the cause. The conductor, in theory, should only be there to help you do what you want to do, which is share music, right? That's your role. You're the one making music. You're the one playing or singing, getting stuff out there. So it's your interpretation that's going on. The conductor's role is to make sure you all do it at the same time, with kind of the same motivation and the same approach to it. All right. These workshops is basically nothing out of the ordinary that you shouldn't be doing yourself for every piece of music that you play. Now, I know those of you who are playing 4, 5, or 6 different groups every week, good luck. It's a lot of work, a lot of repertoire to actually figure out what's going on behind, so you can actually give your best performance. So don't rely on other people to do this stuff for you. This is just normal stuff that we should explore. I just wanted to do it together with you because we're not rehearsing right now. Dynamics, or lack thereof, in this particular piece really brings it home. Yes, dynamics are vital, Ginny, absolutely important. Dynamics actually give meaning to the emotion. Now, that may sound a little backwards, but music, being the language of emotions, tells us what mood we're going on. But it's dynamics that actually are part of the expression of that. Exaggerate. You cannot exaggerate dynamics enough, particularly in wind instruments. It's easier on strings to play a range of dynamics, and it's actually easier on vocals as well. Chris mentions, didn't notice the conductor giving much, if any, direction with the left hand. Yeah, a bit of a mirror conductor, both hands doing the same thing. It's actually the face that got me. The left hand can help. I think I've shared this story with you before, where one of my conducting classes that I went to, we actually conducted a multi-time signature piece of music. Okay, we're standing there in the classroom conducting, and then the teacher came around the class and put a bunch of coins on the table in front of us. So we're standing there conducting this 2/8, 2/4, 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, all that kind of stuff. And then with these coins, he said, with your left hand, put them in piles according to their denomination. So you had to pile all the quarters together, all the dimes together, all the nickels together, while we're conducting this piece of music. It was crazy. That gets you away from the mirror conducting kind of thing. But to me, it was the face. And I think that's perhaps what, where this particular group was lacking in the expressions and the dynamics, as Ginny mentioned, because I didn't see much going on up here to share the story. Playing the notes, not the music. Felt like a high school band, okay. And the transitions, okay. Yeah, the chromatic runs. So Kate mentions about the chromatic runs, how it goes between these sections as well as through the sections, and how the chromatics actually follow and accompany the melody. Now, there are times when you need to make the phrase out of that. We mentioned that at the beginning with the euphoniums. Follow those chromatics. Okay, they are their own line, their own melody going on. If you just punch the notes out, it's not going to do very much. There was somewhere towards the end when the trumpets were playing the melody and the clarinets had that leaning chromatic note into the resolution. There was also something else I noticed in that run through, where there's a phrase where it plays a note, it goes down a semitone, and then it goes back up again. Got to be very, very careful with that one. When you go ba da da, most people really want to lean into that lower note to make something of it, and it becomes the cheesiest distraction you've ever come across. Okay, it's the complete opposite of the leap. When you take care of the lower note, and then the leap, the top note will happen anyway. When you have those three notes in that order, where you go from one note down a semitone and back up again, take care of that lower note again, because it can ruin everything. And it was distracting enough for me in this particular performance where I noticed it and it was just out of place. We like to do a swell. We like to do the crescendo, decrescendo whenever we have phrases like that. It's not always appropriate. Be musical about it, okay? But yeah, chromatics are always awesome. All right, that's all we've got on Zoom right now. Bev, did any comments or questions pop up on Facebook?
Yep, one question from Facebook. Let's see. Do most American sagas or folk tunes follow traditional theme or mood?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure the story or the emotions necessarily follow a particular meaning. I'm thinking of, actually, you know what, they probably do. Thinking about it, and what popped into my mind was Appalachian Spring, of course, that very famous one that Martha Graham did the ballet for, to Copland's music. Similar story. Now, don't forget, folk, before 1910, before World War One, most families, most people who, a lot of people, the only way they could actually share anything cultural was through music making. And that mostly meant singing, okay? Often a more wealthy family would have a piano in the parlor. People who weren't so wealthy, they would go to the saloon and they would have a piano. That was their only form of entertainment, of musical entertainment, was actual live in-person music. Now, at that time, there was a lot of reminiscing through the expansion of the US. So we're talking about not even 1700s, but early 1800s through the early 1900s. That entire century was basically an expansion of families branching out and exploring and heading west or heading east, whichever coast you come from, and just trying new things, surviving, all that kind of stuff. So that's where most American-based folk stories come from, are the stories of those people surviving that transition. So in response to that question, I would say that's probably what most people are sharing, is their hard work, like the guy chopping down the trees, all that kind of stuff, drinking to get over it, the cold, all of those sorts of things. I'm sure there are plenty that I'm not thinking of right now that are very happy and upbeat. But musically, I think it's very important to notice that musically we have developed our own language, our own style, our own dialect. Music, like any other language, is music. English is English, but you've got American English, you've got British English, you've got Australian English, you've got all these South African English, you've got all these different versions of a language. Same in music, and American folk melodies and tunes are quite different harmonically and melodically to the European tunes. And in fact, the English is very different to the French, which is very different to the German, and so on. So yes, you can definitely hear it in the music, that there is definitely a very particular style and mood of American folk tunes. The stories, I'm not quite so sure. It seems like it would be because of that 100 years of exploration and struggle to survive in the wilderness. That's what's coming across. Anything else on Facebook, Bev?
One last question. How do you think playing with emotion can impact dynamics?
Okay, very good question indeed. So music being the language of emotions, that's what we're trying to get across. How do we actually do that? We do that with the notes that are on the page that are reference. Remember that. The notes on the page are reference to the music. They are not the music. When I was in college, I used to hear it all the time. Um, it's all about the music. Focus on the music. It's nothing but the music. It's not true. There is so much more to music. In fact, anyone who's followed me for more than a couple of years would know my favorite phrase of always, there's more to music than music. All right, that's where that comes from. So that will help you do that. The dynamics will actually lead you into a specific emotion. I'm thinking of Beautiful South, that rock, that pop band. They have a terrific way of taking some really, really sad stories. I mean, just dire stories indeed. But you would never know it if you don't know the lyrics. For years, whenever I got involved with music, I would never listen to the lyrics. It just didn't make sense to me. Then I met my wife, who's a literature geek, and now I'm all about the lyrics. Okay, so thanks, Melissa, I appreciate that. But if you don't listen to the lyrics of Beautiful South, you would be very happy and upbeat. You think this is really good music, and then you listen to the story, and you're thinking, "Whoa, what's going on?" And they use their music to tell a different emotion to the story. It's a contrast in emotion. We can do the same thing with dynamics. The dynamics will either belie us or it will tell us the truth. And you can actually use the dynamics to back off and get out the way, which make people pay attention. When people pay attention, they're thinking and they're feeling. What's going on here? Something's different. Something's not quite right. And yet you can also do the exact opposite, make as much noise as you can, make it really loud, and it'll be in your face. And again, you can get excited about that. The tempo of the music makes a big difference as well as the volume. So dynamics absolutely do drive the emotion that you're playing, and it works both ways. Need to know the story first, need to know what kind of emotion you want to express first, then you can apply that using dynamics and other things. If you don't have time to do that, if you choose not to do your research and figure out what it is you're playing, then you can use the dynamics as a guide to the kind of emotions that you think are coming across. Good question. Any more on Facebook?
No, we are good.
Okay, so I know a couple of other things came up. They look sad and bored. Yeah, it really does translate. If you and you know, you hear this thing about fake it till you make it. I disagree with that generally. However, you're here to express an emotion, to help somebody in the audience deal with something, whether they know it or not. They're paying, hopefully, they're paying for an experience that they can't get anywhere else. That's why we do what we do as musicians. That's why we speak this language. If you're not helping people do that, most people have no idea how that happens. Most people have no clue how music expresses emotions. So it's up to us to help them do that. And if you're playing a really happy, upbeat piece of music, and your body language is just as flat as a squashed tuba, then the performance is good. I mean, what benefit is that to anyone? Why bother being there at all? Okay, so yeah, your body language, your facial expressions, Dunedin Concert Band, you guys are very familiar. I say to you all the time, smile with your eyes. You can smile with your eyes as you're playing. Okay, there's a big difference in your facial expressions. Michael Hyatt, I love what somebody said to Michael Hyatt. He's a business leader. He plays banjo and American flute. He was in a meeting one time, and everyone was nervous. They were making some big decisions. Things had gone well, so everyone thought that it was all going. That they had accomplished what they set out to achieve ahead of schedule, under budget, and they were really pleased to be sharing this in this particular meeting. During the meeting, I guess on a coffee break or even after it, Michael Hyatt's secretary said to him, "Did you hear what these people have done?" He said, "Yes." She said, "Are you okay with that? I mean, what do you think? Are you happy with that?" "Well, yeah, they did great." "Really? You think we're on a good roll here? You think, they've done well? Are you happy?" He said, "Yeah, I'm happy." She said, "Good. Would you mind telling your face?" Because in the meeting, he was so expressionless and serious, nobody knew what he was thinking. And they thought they had all failed and let him down somehow because his face didn't reflect what he was feeling. Your body language, your facial expressions have a massive impact on the emotions that you're communicating through music. Okay, that's awesome. Well done. All right, folks. Well, we've run over 15 minutes. Thank you for staying on. Really appreciate that. Next week we were chatting before. Next week, I am really looking forward to the next week's. DCB played this a couple of years ago or something, and it's coming up again soon. We're going to do Coco Pelli's Dance again. All right, and that's the piece we're going to explore next week. Fabulous piece of music. If you don't know who Coco Pelli is, American native Indian figure, mythical figure, look him up online, do a Google search, because we're going to explore a piece of music that goes through his mischievous times next week. So there is an event invitation set up on the Dunedin Concert Band Facebook page. That is what you need to share with people. Okay, after you've shared today's video, during the week, go ahead and share that event from Facebook about next week's workshop, because it's a fabulous piece of music. We're going to have a lot of fun with that, and hopefully you'll have some questions too. Thank you so much indeed. Stay safe. I hope you're not struggling as much as I am with this social isolation. Oh my goodness. As an introvert, I've been surprised how much I miss you guys, and I need that fuel. So I really appreciate you being here, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You take care now, folks. Bye.